They claim nothing is stronger than a sister's relationship. They are wrong. My sister Sofia believed that money could buy anything, including our mother. She believed it could provide her with a clear conscience, a five-star solution to a complicated human situation. But what she didn't realize and couldn't comprehend from her glass and chrome penthouse overlooking the Pacific was that her checkbook was writing the final, terrible chapter of her own life. And I was going to make sure she read every word. The fragrance of bacon frying in a cast iron skillet defines my entire life. It's the aroma of Saturday mornings in Chicago, the sound of my father perusing the pages of the Tribune just before he died, and the soothing weight of our old cat laying on my feet under the kitchen table. It's the anchor that binds me to this place and this life. This Saturday was no exception, or at least I tried to believe it was. Sunlight, pale and optimistic, streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the dust motes whirling in the air and putting a pleasant glow on the crowded gallery of family photos tacked to the refrigerator with a jumble of magnets. There was me and Sofia in matching pink dresses with gap-toothed grins, a faded Polaroid of Mom and Dad on their wedding day, and an embarrassing school photo of me from my first year of teaching. A life captured in smiling, frozen moments. I flipped the eggs and the delicate whites bubbled around the rims. I donned an old Northwestern sweatshirt, a soft and thin fleece, and worn-out yoga trousers. This was my weekend uniform, the armor I put on to be a daughter again after a week as Ms. Rice in a classroom full of rowdy third graders. My mother, Alina, sat at the table, hunched over her crossword puzzle. At 70, her hands trembled uncontrollably, a frustrating betrayal by her own body. Her forehead pinched in concentration, but her eyes were far away and misty, as if she were seeing through the newspaper, the table, and into a past I couldn't reach. A 7-letter word for recollection starts with M-yog. She muttered, her voice faint and papery. I placed the eggs and bacon on a dish next to her, the familiar blue willow design worn from countless of meals. That would be memory, Mom. I answered gently, my tone prepared and cheery. She looked up, and for a horrifying second, her eyes went blank. It was a look I'd become accustomed to, yet it still sent shivers down my spine. Then recognition flickered. Maria, when did you come here? Where is your father? The question was a dull H. He had been gone for 3 years. I've been here all morning, Mom. I murmured, putting my hand over her shaky one. Her skin felt like aged paper. Dad has gone out. But he's getting better. Remember, the doctor stated his back was getting better. It was a falsehood we both tried to believe, a pleasant fiction to soften the rough edges of her confusion. She didn't need to replay her anguish over his death every morning. She nodded, but her gaze had already shifted to the window, lost again. This was our new normal, a gradual, painful deterioration of the clever, sharp woman who raised me. I spent my weeks molding young brains and my weekends clinging on to my mother's frayed edges. I cherished these times, every irritating, wonderful, and agonizing second of them. This house, with its creaky flooring and a lifetime of memories etched onto the walls, was my haven. That was ours. The phone rang, its loud digital chirp breaking through the morning silence. I recognized who it was before I saw the screen, Sofia. Her name appeared above a professionally shot photo of her with a flawless, white-toothed smile against a backdrop of a California sunset. I tapped the screen, and her face, breathtakingly lovely even on video conference, filled my phone. She sat in her penthouse with the Pacific Ocean as a big, dazzling blue canvas behind her. Her hair was arranged in sleek, costly waves. Her makeup was impeccable, and she wore a silk top that most likely cost more than my monthly grocery bill. "Hello, little sister." Her speech was vibrant and enthusiastic, a stark contrast to the relative quietness of our Hago kitchen. "How is Mom? You seem exhausted." The casual observation hit like a small, sharp stone. "Same as usual, Sofia. I am fine. Mom is slightly forgetful today." Sofia's flawlessly plucked brows knitted together as she looked at Mom's image on the television. "A bit forgetful. Maria, we have to be practical. You cannot continue doing this on your own. I've told you that I have the financial resources to provide the greatest possible care for her." A familiar defensiveness pricked my flesh. Mom liked to remain at home. I am taking good care of her here. Sofia gave a long, theatrical sigh. It was a sound Mom had perfected since we were teenagers, one that suggested a world in which tolerance was being tested. "I know you are doing your best. I really do. But love does not pay for medical bills, honey. It does not recruit memory care specialists. I'm flying in next week. We need to have a serious conversation. The call concluded with a sterile click. I looked at my mother, who was now tracing the design on her necklace, a modest gold locket Dad had given her for their 25th anniversary. A knot of anxiety formed in my stomach. I'd always trusted Sofia and admired her brilliance and drive, which seemed so glamorous in comparison to my own modest life. But there was something in her voice, a cool, corporate efficiency that had developed over time. It was the voice of a problem-solving woman, and I got the sinking, terrible impression that our mother had become nothing more than a problem to be fixed. A week later, I was sitting in a place that seemed designed to scare you into submission. The lawyer's office was all dark mahogany, the bookcases loaded with thick, leather-bound books that appeared to have never been opened. The air smelt like money and lemon polish. I felt small and out of place in my plain teacher's uniform, dwarfed by the richness of the luxurious leather chair I was sitting on. Sofia sat across the big desk, calm and serene as a queen on her throne. Her lawyer stood next to her, a man with silver hair and a suit sharp enough to cut glass. He exuded a calm, professional ruthlessness. The lawyer stated that providing full conservatorship to Mrs. Sofia Reyes is in Mrs. Elena Rees's best interests, citing an independent medical evaluation and Ms. Maria Rye's financial condition. The words hung in the air, heavy and oppressive. Independent medical evaluation. What's the financial situation? The room leaned slightly. Medical evaluation. I finally gasped out, my voice sounding low and raspy. What are you talking about? What about my finances? I'm a teacher. I'm not poor. Mom needs me. Sofia stared at me, not sympathetically, but with profound, wary pity, as if I were a kid throwing a fit. Maria, consider the truth of the situation. Mom will require the services of expert memory care professionals, which your teacher's income cannot pay. I can provide her the best. I've already located a fantastic facility called Serenity Meadows. It's more of a 5-star resort than a nursing home. The nonchalant harshness of it took my breath away. The way she said, facility, as if she were talking about a storage unit. She referred to our mother as if she were a line item on a budget, a financial problem that demanded an optimal solution. There was no emotion to it, only ruthless, cold logic. Tears that I had been holding back began to burn at the corners of my eyes. You didn't even ask Mech, you just went behind my back and did all this. Because I knew you'd let your emotions cloud your judgment. She explained, her tone still infuriatingly calm. I'm doing the right thing for Mom. The court will see that. And the court did. It was a flurry of legal jargon, documents I didn't understand, and a system that appeared to favor the person with the most expensive lawyer. My love, commitment, and daily sacrifices were all inadmissible as proof. All that mattered were bank statements and a doctor's report from someone I had never met. I was legally and formally declared helpless. Serenity Meadows' pristine, glistening corridors reminded me of a gorgeous, sterile jail. Fountains gurgled peacefully in a groomed courtyard, and abstract art adorned the walls. It was perfect, antiseptic, and completely lifeless. I pushed Mom's wheelchair, her small, weak body submerged within it. She held my hand with surprising strength, her knuckles white. Maria, I don't like this place, she said quietly, her eyes wide with a clear terror I hadn't seen in months. Please take me home, honey. I want to go home. I strained to keep my voice calm and stop my own tears from falling. It's only for a little bit, Mom, so the doctors here can better care for you, make you stronger. The falsehood tasted like ash in my lips. Sofia stood there, arms crossed, her gaze blank, watching as Mom's familiar bag was placed in the sterile beige room. She served as a project manager on site, ensuring that the changeover went smoothly. As I bent to hug my mother farewell and kiss her soft, wrinkled cheek, a nurse with a gentle but strong grin gently withdrew our hands. She'll fit in just fine, sweetheart. We'll take great care of her. The door to the room clicked shut with utter finality. I was left alone in the empty, echoing corridor. And beyond the closed door, I could hear my mother's faint, terrified sobbing calling my name. It was a sound that would disturb my sleep for weeks. It was the sound of my failure. The weeks that followed were a whirl of growing anguish. My calls to Serenity Meadows were answered with pleasant, robotic updates from the nursing personnel. She's adjusting nicely. She had a delightful meal. They were meaningless platitudes. When I asked to speak with her directly, she was constantly resting or quinn in activity. Sophia, on the other hand, moved at a horrifying speed. She listed our childhood house in Lincoln Park for sale. The internet listing photographs were a gut punch. Our comfortable, crowded life arranged and sterilized for strangers, with every personal touch removed. Then came the emails from estate liquidators. Dad had a collection of old maps, Mom had jewelry, and we only used cutlery on holidays. Each thing sold felt like a piece of my history had been severed and auctioned off to the highest bidder. In desperation, I approached the police. I sat in a shabby precinct, attempting to explain the problem to a bored, overweight officer who glanced at me over his glasses. "Mom," he said, "your sister has a legally executed conservatorship. There is nothing we can do. This is a civil matter. A civil matter. The theft of my mother's life and our family's legacy was a civil case." My next trip was a legal assistant's office with worn-out carpets and evident desperation. The lawyer, a young, sincere woman with tired eyes, listened attentively. "They have the paperwork," she stated, her voice filled with genuine pity but little hope. "They have a medical evaluation. To challenge the conservatorship, you must provide compelling, tangible evidence that your sister is operating in bad faith or actively injuring your mother. Have you got anything like that?" I had nothing except a hollow ache in my chest and a suspicion that was becoming into a terrible, consuming conviction. The system, the law, and everything else designed to safeguard people like my mother had failed us. The sheer injustice of it was a tangible weight crushing against my lungs, making it difficult to breathe. And in that suffocating darkness, under the crushing weight of powerlessness, a tiny, dangerous ember of rage began to burn. Despair was chilly and passive. Rage, I was starting to realize, was fuel. My apartment became a battleground. Stacks of legal papers, bank statements that I had obtained copies of, and property listing printouts covered every surface. The bright alphabet posters and student artwork that I had posted on my walls appeared to tease me with their innocence. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. Dark, bruised circles appeared under my eyes, and my garments began to hang loosely around my frame. I was a ghost, haunting the ruins of my own existence. One night, around 3 a.m., surrounded by the carnage, I grabbed an old framed photograph from my bedside. It was of Sofia and me as children, around the ages of 7 and 12. We were on the beach at Lake Michigan, arms flung around Mom's shoulders, laughing and squinting into the sun. We were a team. We were a family. What happened to the girl, the older sister who taught me how to ride a bike and assisted me with my algebra homework? Where has she gone? The agony of that loss was so severe and strong that it felt like a bodily injury. But as I stared at the photograph, the pain began to shift, transmute. It hardened and crystallized into something cold, sharp, and transparent. A diamond of pure, unadulterated determination. She underestimated me. The thought came unexpectedly and fiercely. She always has. She sees a kind-hearted, underpaid instructor. She assumes I'll cry and give up. For the first time in weeks, I wore a frigid, thin smile on my lips. But she had forgotten one thing. A teacher knows how to complete her assignment. That was the night the metamorphosis started. Maria, who was weeping and helpless, vanished and was replaced by someone else. Someone cooler, systematic, and more patient. I leveraged the skills I developed while researching lesson ideas and creating student assessments. My days were spent with my students, in a cocoon of normalcy in which I could remain the gentle, nurturing Ms. Reyes. My nights, however, belonged to Sofia. I became a detective in my own life tale. I read everything I could find about conservatorship law, mastering the language of loopholes and legal complexities. I taught myself how to search public records, databases for property deeds, business licenses, and court files. I began with the most basic step, a Google search for Sofia's company, Sofia Rise Financial. At first, it was all glossy articles and a beautifully built website bragging about her Midas touch. But I looked deeper, going beyond the first few pages of filtered results. And there they were. A few recent, bad reviews in an obscure financial community. Clients complained about risky investments that had gone wrong. Whispers of lost money. It was a flaw in her immaculate exterior. It was only a small one, but it was enough. My mind started working, connecting the dots. My aim was no longer just the conservatorship, but Sofia herself. Her greatest weakness was also her greatest strengthening an intense need to present an image of unrivaled achievement. That kind of arrogance, I reasoned, had to conceal something. I glanced through my contacts and came upon a name I hadn't thought about in years, Mark. We had been in the same business school undergraduate program before I went to education. He was bright, cynical, and had advanced to a high-level finance position in California. We had lost touch, but I knew he was involved in Sofia's world. I took a deep breath and dialed his number. "Mark," I said, "it's Maria Reyes," in a hoarse whisper. "I realize this is unexpected, but I need a favor. A large one. I need you to learn as much as you can about Sofia Reyes Financial, and it must be entirely off the record." While I waited for Mark to dig, I concentrated on Serenity Meadows. After being denied multiple visits, I eventually had one authorized. I stepped in wearing a false smile and carrying a bag of my mother's favorite lavender-scented lotions. My phone was in my pocket, the speech recorder secretly enabled. I approached a young nurse, her face etched with tiredness, and began with false admiration. "This place must be so expensive," I exclaimed, gesturing around the immaculate lobby. "My sister always insists on the very best for our mom." The nurse let out a brief, bitter laugh before catching herself and looking over her shoulder. She lowered her voice. "It's only for show, you know. Last month, they trimmed their personnel to the bone. We're all working doubles. Your mom sometimes has to wait an hour for someone to help her to the restroom." A white-hot wrath erupted in my chest, making me dizzy. I had to literally clench my fists to stop yelling. 1 hour. My mother, proud and dignified, was left to wait in her own filth while Sofia paid for this 5-star fraud. On my way out, I pretended to take a wrong turn and ended up in the service hallway near Mom's room. I noticed it, a dark, spreading patch of mold on the wall behind a line cart. My hands shook as I brought out my phone to take a picture. "Can I help you, miss?" I whipped around. A stern-faced supervisor stood there, her eyes furrowed in suspicion. My heart pounded against my ribcage. I stuffed the phone into my purse, my mind whirling. "Oh!" "I apologize," I muttered, attempting a ditzy smile. I must have been twisted around, just seeking for the ladies' room. She looked at me with chilly eyes as I ran away. The close call, the real threat of getting caught, did not frighten me. It energized me. A few days later, Mark called back. His voice sounded gloomy. "Maria, it's worse than you think," he added without prelude. "Sofia is not only in difficulty, she's drowning. A large client is suing her for millions. Her company is a house of cards, and she's on the verge of bankruptcy." He paused, and I could hear him draw a breath. "She has been liquidating your mother's assets and depositing the proceeds directly into her business accounts. She isn't paying for 5-star treatment, Maria. She's squandering your mother's life savings to attempt to settle her lawsuit and keep her business running." I closed my eyes as the phone felt cold against my ear. There it was, concrete evidence. Proof of bad faith, the smoking gun. Sofia was not defending our mother. She consumed her, devouring her piece by piece in order to rescue herself. In that instant, all remaining sisterly love I had for her vanished. It was replaced by something cold and rigid like a slab of ice. It was time to go to war. The courtroom was sterile, bland, and devoid of warmth or passion. The air was thick with tense, anticipatory silence, punctuated only by the shuffle of papers and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Sofia sat at the opposing table alongside her wealthy, silver-haired lawyer. She looked fantastic in a tailored navy blue suit, exuding authority and righteous wrath. She exuded unwavering confidence, occasionally peering over at me with thinly veiled contempt. I sat with my legal aid lawyer, a lady who had been overworked and underpaid, but now looked at the evidence I'd gathered with gloomy enthusiasm. In my plain cardigan, I undoubtedly resembled what Sofia saw, a terrified little mouse. But my heart was thumping slowly and steadily, like a predator's. Sofia's attorney went first. He was slick, eloquent, and created a lovely image for the judge. He produced attractive brochures from Serenity Meadows, staff testimonials, the same ones who had lied to me on the phone, and extensive financial papers demonstrating his client's ability to meet her mother's every need. "It is clear, Your Honor," he said, his voice vibrating with emotion, "that my client, Ms. Sofia Reyes, possesses both the financial means and the profound sense of familial duty to ensure her mother's safety and comfort. Miss Maria Reyes, with all due respect for her wonderful vocation, just cannot deliver this level of care. He sat down. The trap was laid. Sofia was preening, convinced that she had won. Then it was our turn. My lawyer, Miss Cho, stood up. She was little, but she commanded the entire room. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear and powerful. "We would like to present a slightly different financial picture of Miss Sophia Rise." She lay out the exhibits one by one. The evidence of Sophia's rising debts, printed from financial forums. The official court filing in the multi-million-dollar lawsuit against her firm. The bank records then showed highlighted transactions from our mother's accounts, which Sofia now controlled, right into Sophia Rees Financial's corporate account. With each successive piece of paper, I noted Sophia's face lose some of its color. Her immaculate serenity started to show microscopic cracks. She gave me a gaze that was no longer disdainful, but filled with pure loathing. Next, Miss Cho summoned her witnesses. First up was the young, tired nurse from Serenity Meadows, who had now quit her job. She testified, her voice shaky but clear, of understaffing, negligence, and the hours residents were left alone. She explained the mold I'd photographed. Then came a court-appointed property appraiser, who testified that our family house was sold in a rush for at least 20% less than its market value. A classic sign of a seller desperate for cash. Every witness, every document, was another hammer blow to the false idol Sofia had created. The image of the loyal, rich daughter was being gradually shattered, piece by piece, right in front of her and the entire court. I could see the panic rising behind her perfectly controlled expression. "And finally, Your Honor," Ms. chatted, her voice falling for dramatic effect. "We'd like to present one last piece of evidence. This is not a financial document, but something more straightforward." A big monitor was pushed into the center of the courtroom and turned on. My heart began to beat in a frenzied, heavy pace against my ribs. This was it. It is now or never. The screen flashed to life, displaying a wobbly, pixelated footage. It was video footage from my phone from the day I visited my mother. Alina was seated by the window in her Serenity Meadows room, with the dreary, manicured lawn visible behind her. At first, she appeared as she often did, perplexed, her hands fumbling in her lap. She was the epitome of a powerless victim. And suddenly something changed. She tilted her head slightly, her gaze drawn to the disguised lens of my phone, which I had propped up in a vase of artificial flowers. Her look became sharper. The fogness in her eyes vanished, leaving behind a striking, bright clarity. When she spoke, her voice was not the fragile, ready murmur I was accustomed to. It was strong. It was evident. The voice was that of the woman who had raised me. "Sophia, my daughter," she added, staring directly into the camera and at the sister who wasn't present. "I understand you are in difficulties. I've always known. However, seizing my home and independence was not the solution." A collective, quiet gasp echoed around the courtroom. The judge leaned forward, his face a mask of intense concentration. Sophia's lawyer appeared completely distraught. My mother's voice, captured on my cheap phone, filled the otherwise silent room. "And Maria. My Maria has always been here. She does not have your money, but she has given me something money cannot buy. She gave me her time. She offered me her love. I want to go home. I want to go home with Maria." The camera in my shaking hand panned slightly, capturing a reflection in the glass. A reflection of my own tear-stained face. The video ended. Ms. Chi turned the monitor off. Sofia was the center of attention in the courtroom. Her face was a gorgeous, devastating canvas of devastation. The hubris was gone, evaporated. In its place was sheer, slack-jawed surprise. That shock turned into primal. Animal panic as the full weight of her exposure hit her. Finally, as her eyes met mine across the courtroom, her look shifted to one of total, empty misery. There was no more fight in her. She had been so fully, surgically, and utterly exposed. This was my vengeance. Not a cry of wrath, but a quiet, cold, and questionable reality displayed on a television screen. She knew I had beaten her in that single, soul-crushing moment. And, more crucially, she understood why. Because she forgot who our mother was. She'd forgotten who I am. The judge's gavel dropped with a crack that echoed like a gunshot in the hushed room. "The court hereby temporarily revokes the conservatorship of Miss Sophia Reyes," he stated, his voice booming, "and will be opening a criminal investigation into allegations of fraud and financial elder abuse." A few months later, sunshine streamed through the same kitchen window, but everything had changed. The house was ours again, purchased from the astonished buyer with a portion of the assets blocked by the court and restored to my mother. It was laden with the aroma of new dirt and lavender. I was helping Mom repot some flowers on the ledge, and her hands, though still weak, were moving with fresh purpose. She appeared 10 years younger, with the light back in her eyes. "Put in a little more of the lavender, dear," she murmured, her voice clear and clear. "The scent helps me think." I smiled, my hands buried in the dark, rich soil. "Mother, why didn't you tell me sooner? Did you know what was going on? Were you pretending?" She paused her work and turned to look at me, her eyes calm and wise. "I wanted to give Sofia a chance," she explained softly. "This is a test. I knew she was in trouble, and I wanted to see if her love for her family overcame her greed. I had hoped that she would do the right thing." She reached out and grabbed my hand, her palm gritty with soil. "When she failed the test, I knew I needed to help you. Do you recall this ancient locket?" She felt the gold necklace at her throat, which Dad had given her. "Of course," I replied. "Your father was always a bit of a spy movie enthusiast," she remarked with a sad smile. "He gave it to me years ago. He explained it was just in case. It contains a little recording device within. I recorded Sofia's phone calls during her visits, as well as her chats about selling the house and paying off her debts. I put the memory card in the copy of To Kill a Mockingbird that you promised to bring me." I looked at her, my head reeling. The book. I had assumed it was simply a soothing, familiar object for her. I had no idea. My mother, the woman I had battled so hard to protect, the woman I saw as a hapless victim, had always been the silent architect of my victory. She had given me the final, most important piece of ammunition without my knowing it. On the small television in the living room, a local news report was broadcast. The camera saw Sofia, clad in ordinary, drab attire, exiting the courthouse surrounded by reporters shouting questions. Her face appeared pallid and drawn. She had lost everything. Her company was bankrupt. Her image was shattered. Her license had been withdrawn, and she was facing jail time. She was fully and thoroughly destroyed. I didn't feel a triumphant wave of delight. Only a peaceful, melancholy tranquility. The fight had altered me. Yes, I was stronger, but a part of me had become harder, colder. I had witnessed how darkness may grow in the heart of someone I cared about. I looked at my mother, who had returned to her flowers, a sweet grin on her lips as she breathed in the aroma of fresh lavender. They say that revenge is best served cold, but they don't tell you it has a peculiar, bittersweet aftertaste. They don't tell you that sometimes the most powerful weapon is not wrath, but quiet, enduring love. I fought for my mother, but we ultimately saved each other. I threw my arms around her petite shoulders and pulled her into a hug. The circle was closed. I was now her guardian, not by a piece of paper signed by a judge, but by a bond that no amount of money or deception could ever sever.